Empress Dowager Cixi, the woman who once held the fate of an entire empire, was renowned for her firmness and strategic prowess both in the harem and court politics. She was the last symbol of power in the Qing Dynasty, making even high officials and emperors wary. Even young emperors were merely shadows under her authority. But if she had not chosen the path of power, if after Xianfeng's death, she had not entered politics but quietly retreated, living like a Zen master, chanting sutras daily in the harem, raising birds, tending flowers, maintaining herself like an old pine tree amidst the politicals, what would have become of the Qing Dynasty's faith? With Tongzi, Guangxu, and the painful turning points of modern Chinese history. This is not history, but a parallel scenario, a fantasy that helps us imagine. Just one simple choice, if taken in a different direction, could it quietly alter the destiny of an entire empire? Let's explore together. In the late Qing Dynasty, the country fell into a series of relentless and unavoidable upheavals. The decaying politics grew increasingly rotten. The sighs from the capital Beijing could never drown out the gunfire echoing from the borders. Power was concentrated in the hands of a few individuals, while the people suffered in misery and hunger. The world around was changing day by day, while the court struggled between conservatism and reform, between faith and survival. In such circumstances, a woman sat onto the stage of history. Not with weapons, but with sharpness and an understanding of human hearts. Cixi was originally just a concubine of Xianfeng, but through wisdom and decisiveness, she gradually became a regent Empress Dowager, holding the fate of an empire stalled at the crossroads of the century. But if after Xianfeng's death, Cixi had not chosen power, if she had not reached into the grand scheme, not established influence that quietly retreated to the harem, living a Zen master's life, what would have changed? Imagine, within the towering walls of the Forbidden City, an Empress Dowager choosing a simple life, without extravagance or mayhem. Just a small room with incense, a wooden chair, and a few sutras. Each morning waking with the dawn, she meditated under the shade of a tree, personally watering the peony in the courtyard, like a hermit within the court. She did not retreat in anger or defeat. She did so because she understood that worldly affairs cannot be shaped by personal will. In the stillness of Zen, she chose to be a conscious speck of dust amidst the storm of power, believing that sometimes inaction is also a form of action. This hypothesis is not far-fetched. In East Asian palace history, there have been powerful women who chose to retreat. Like Xian, who co-regented with Cixi but rarely interfered in politics. Or cases of palace ladies who chose to live in seclusion within hidden corners of the palace. If that had happened, could the fate of the Qing dynasty have taken a different path? And could Cixi, instead of becoming a symbol of power and struggle, have been a legendary female Zen master, admired by later generations, as the one who held the last breath of a dying dynasty? Cixi chose to quietly retreat to the harem, leaving politics to the officials and young emperors. That decision was like a refreshing breeze through corridors stifled by contention. The court officials were divided, some breathing a sigh of relief, others bewildered. An Empress Dowager not interfering in politics was unprecedented. Tongzi was then very young, granted real power early. Though still immature, not overly sheltered, he was forced to mature in a harsh environment. This is precisely what makes some policies more flexible and more practical. You trusted and employed Confucian scholars, seeking to restore the spirit of Confucianism as the court principle. Cixi's confidants, the once arrogant eunuchs and court officials, were gradually removed from the center of power. Court ladies and eunuchs no longer chase after elaborate rituals. From lifestyle and arrangement to dietary portions, everything conveys a level of simplicity. The imperial court, once a symbol of supreme power, has now become a tranquil and somewhat humble space. Not everyone understands, but many can feel it. The simplicity that too high brings actually makes people's hearts less restless. Under her reign, which lacked an iron fist, the imperial court entered a period of self-purification, where only those with genuine talent could remain. There are those who only know how to rely on power and must retreat. A new form is gradually taking shape, governing the country through benevolence and righteousness, through cultural discipline, rather than through the power of intimidation. The Zen-living philosophy of Empress Dowager Cixi, initially an isolated phenomenon within the inner palace, gradually spread outward like a silent yet persistent wave. The young nobles, once caught in the whirlwind of power, began to return to Confucian studies, calligraphy, and self-cultivation. The discussions in the study are no longer solely about policies or laws, but about life's meaning, ideals, and mindfulness in every act of governance. The people of the capital whispered about the serene palace, where the Empress Dowager sat in meditation, receiving no envoys, demanding no tributes, and issuing no edicts. Ideally, governing a country like practicing meditation is beginning to take root among those seeking a salvation from the current instability. However, not everyone welcomes this trend. The pro-Western reformers, especially those officials who had been sent to study in Japan and Europe, saw this as a sign of weakness. They warned that if the court remained engrossed in meditation, it would be left behind in the world's wave of renewal. Zheng Guofan and Li Hongzheng, those who once remained neutral, were pushed to the brink of having to make a choice. On one side is the Zen transformation of the court, on the other is the industrialization of it. The debate was bloodless but as tense as a taut string. And everyone understood that without neutrality, the rift within the court would grow deeper. Behind the curtain of power, there were no words of guidance, forcing the Qing court to adapt on its own to the increasingly intense upheavals both domestically and internationally. Major events do not disappear but unfold in a gentler and less confrontational manner. The Taiping Rebellion, which was once brutally suppressed under the orders of the imperial court, is now being approached through negotiation. No more royal edicts, no more military orders. The heading generals is replaced by sending delegations to negotiate, divide spheres of influence, and stabilize people's livelihoods. A few areas were temporarily granted self-governance, an unprecedented move in the history of the Qing Dynasty. The Second Opium War broke out with strong intervention from Western countries. But when the court no longer had a resolute Empress Dowager behind it, the high officials chose the path of negotiation earlier, sparing Beijing from being occupied once again. The treaty signed remained unequal, but it did not carry the tone of surrender. Rather, it was like a temporary agreement to allow the nation to regain its strength. Mao Tuat coup. Names like Kong Yue and Liang Qichao still had the opportunity to participate in the reform of the state. The court chose a middle path, preserving traditional values while gradually opening up to new ideas. The absence of a personal authority does not immediately weaken the court, but neither does it make it stronger. A system lacking clear direction easily falls into a state of stagnation, where no one is wrong, but no one is strong enough to lead the way. China has entered an uncertain period of transition, no longer rigid, yet not fully capable of thorough reform. And above all, people began to mention Tu Hai as a symbol of tranquility. One who could have seized power, but chose to relinquish it. In a court that was slowly losing its brightness, a harem, originally the discreet center of power for Cixi, gradually transformed into a tranquil and pure space, akin to a secluded retreat. People no longer call that place the West Warm Pavilion or the Genshi Palace, but by common, folksy name, the palace's celestial garden. Cixi lived like a true practitioner. Every day, she rises before dawn, meditates before the glow of agarwood incense, recites a passage from the Avatasaka Sutra, and then quietly tends to the peony tree of yesteryear has now become a sacred tree, not for its beauty but for its perseverance in surviving through years of change. She did not forbid others from visiting, but she also did not actively invite anyone over. Those who enter the inner chambers, if they do not sincerely listen, will find it difficult to preserve the tranquility of the space. Once, an envoy from Korea was granted an audience and upon returning, recounted that, "I don't know if I met the Empress Dowager or a lay Buddhist woman, but her gaze made one feel a weight of years lift away." The relationship between the regent and the co-ruler, and later the Guangxu emperor, was no longer one of control or constraint. Instead, it was a gentle bond like the principle of motherhood, without coercion or criticism. Only provoked thought through ancient moral stories. Cixi was no longer the ruler, but every word she spoke was still recorded like a kind of inner palace scripture. The court gradually became a new cultural center, where scholars, calligraphers, painters, and even medical scholars came to request permission to stay for a few months to study away and perform rituals. Ink-washed paintings and elegant poems from the inner palace began to spread among the people. creating a wave of refined culture that swept across the northern provinces. When Western envoys visited, they no longer saw a court straining to prove its power. Instead, they saw a seemingly tranquil nation, where an Empress Dowager lived like a hermit, and a palace that was no longer a symbol of domination but a place preserving the spirit. The story of an Empress Dowager choosing a simple life spread like a wind. Some praised it as enlightenment, others lamented that such great wisdom was not used to save the country. But everyone had to admit that the inner palace, under Cixi's hand, had become a place where people learned to turn inward. In the 20th year of Guangxu's reign, the court entered a period of severe trials. Tongji had long passed, and Guangxu ascended the throne but was increasingly torn between two ideologies: reform following the West or preserving old values. Without Cixi to guide him, he stumbled on the path she had once avoided, the path of power. Many reforms were attempted and then shelved. Some provinces began to show signs of autonomous thinking. The borders gradually crumbled. The court did not collapse but could no longer control everything. The moderate stance of later emperors seemed indecisive in the face of increasingly clear waves of foreign invasion. Amid this scene, Cixi still lived and meditated every morning in her small garden. She neither intervened nor complained. Only occasionally, those closest to her recounted that her gaze toward the distant imperial city was sad but not despairing. As if she had foreseen it all, she died in silence, leaving no political will. No court rituals, only a handwritten sutra placed on her chest. Gossip is like illusion, but time's like a dream. This body is like plum blossoms, dissolving under the sunlight. China could not avoid its losses. In 1911, the Qing Dynasty came to an end. Later historians debated that if Cixi had held power as before, she might have delayed that collapse. Some also argued that if she had intervened, history would have been bloodier. Remains only. It cannot change the past, nor can it alter the outcome. It exists only to give people today an imaginative space to see that sometimes history is not just about what has happened, but a mirror to see ourselves in choices never made.
If the veil stirred, subscribe and meet the next encounter.